Okay, everyone, welcome back. We're going to start our afternoon with meditation like we always do. And then I'm going to move into this topic of practicing non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to you. So since most of you guys have all been meditating with me quite a bit, I'm not going to do guidance again because you guys need to get comfortable with meditating on your own. So we're going to do breathing mindfulness meditation where you're focused on the breath and you're cutting off and letting go. So yesterday I still gave you a little bit of guidance, but today I'm just going to do chanting and just go right into meditation, and you guys should be able to do that, and then we'll just come out with the chanting as well. You feel okay doing that, ma'am? Because you're the only one that hasn't been meditating with me regularly. You okay to do meditation without guidance? Okay, great. All right. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sambuddho Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสักขะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly ease your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue with our course here. And as you see on Wednesdays, lots of people come because we have regular classes, and then people who are in the courses will typically stick around. So this is pretty common. You'll see this on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday, that people will come in and then we're only intending to be here for the morning, so they tend to kind of leave after that. So you guys are interested in learning more and getting deeper into it and really understanding the path to enlightenment. So this is a topic that you're going to need to really understand, because you're going to have, and you're going to see that you have many, many attachments in your mind. Many attachments. The more you learn about this practice, the more you learn, the more you train your mind with meditation, you're going to see countless attachments in your mind. It's almost like standing on top of a garbage heap. And as soon as you clear off some attachments, you drop down and you're on more garbage. And then you clear off those and you drop down and you're on more. And you keep clearing it off and clearing it off. And eventually you're going to get to solid ground. It's just going to take some time. Or another way to think about it is like an onion, that there's all these layers that you got to peel back. And the outer layers, they peel off pretty easily. Like if you're attached to a Snickers bar or M&Ms or something like that, you can let go of those attachments pretty easily. It'll take a little bit of effort and you can let those go pretty easily. But when you get deeper into the core, those attachments are harder to let go of. And as your journey on the path to enlightenment, the attachments that are still sticking around by the time you get closer and closer to enlightenment are the ones that are harder and harder to let go of. But by that time, your mind is more well trained, you got more wisdom, you got more support around you. So from that standpoint, you have more ability to let go of these attachments. But the longer you're on the path, the ones that are sticking around are the hardest ones to let go of. And oftentimes, it's attachment to those people who are closest to you that are the ones that are sticking around the longest. Like with my wife, it probably took her a good 5 or 6 years for me to help her get rid of her attachment to her son. And I think it's just about gone now, right? So when you have children, For women, it's very hard because this being was inside your body. And they were part of this body at one point. There's an attachment there. But even fathers, they can get attached too, right? So there's all these attachments to people that are closest to you. So your parents are most likely attached to you. You're probably attached to your parents. Probably your siblings are attached to you, and you're attached to your siblings. And this is why oftentimes families have all kinds of difficulties. You can just see all kinds of problems in families. But when you go outside and you spend time with people like me and each other, hey, you guys are fine, right? You're so peaceful, you're so joyful. But with your family, it's like, oh my goodness, it's so hard, right? You get so discontent. And that's where you start thinking that they're the problem, right? Because when you go outside and spend time with other people, you're just fine. It's only when you spend time with them maybe that you have a lot of trouble. And this is where your mind can start having misunderstanding and delusion, thinking that they're the problem. Well, surely they have some issues. They have some problems too, right? But you're not going to be able to solve your relationship issues by focusing on them. You need to focus on your own mind. So what this topic is going to do for you is teach you how to eliminate attachment to the people who are closest to you. People like your parents, your brothers and sisters, your life partners, your children, people like this. These are the ones that typically you're really, really attached to. If somebody is on the news and you see somebody dies, no big deal. You're not grieving. You're not sad. Somebody you don't even know dies. You're not sad. You're not upset. But boy, if somebody close to you dies, you're going to be really upset if you have attachment, right? You're going to be grieving because your mind's attached to them and you're holding on. If somebody out in the world wants to do one thing or another, okay, you're fine. Go do it. If you like to do that thing, go do it. But if your friend or your family or your children or your life partner wants to do that thing, you get so angry or irritated when that thing's happening. And that's because of the attachment. So you guys know now, having studied, what craving, desire, attachment is, and that you need to eliminate it, that it's breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity that's generally training to get rid of these things. It's the Eightfold Path that you need to be working on. You learned about identifying your cravings and looking inward and trying to figure out what are you attached to. Well, one of the things that you might see you're attached to is you're attached to your mom maybe being healthy all the time, or you're attached to your dad speaking to you in a certain way, or you're attached to your brother or sister doing this one particular thing. So once you identify that, yes, you are indeed attached to your certain relationships, now you're going to need to start doing these kinds of things in order to eliminate these attachments. If you're having any discontentedness in any of your relationships, there's attachment there, right? You can't get angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed if there is an attachment. So if you have a relationship where you find that you're arguing or you're hostile or bitter, or you just feel so frustrated when you're around that person or annoyed, there are certain cravings, desires, attachments that you're having. So I'm going to teach you how to get rid of your attachment to the person, not ending the relationship. Because sometimes people think that the way to eliminate, or the way to get to enlightenment, is to eliminate your relationships, because they know that the Buddha left his family and he went away for 6 years, and they think that that's the way to eliminate attachment. Some people think that you can't be in a relationship without attachment because they're misunderstanding what the attachment is. They think the attachment is the object. It's not the object, right? It's not the mobile phone. It's not the computer. It's not the mom or dad. Those aren't the attachments. It's in the mind. It's the longing, yearning, and wanting and expecting this person to be a certain way. So when people know that the Buddha went away for 6 years, they think that they have to end all their relationships to get to enlightenment. And this is untrue. Because if you were sitting around by yourself and there was no relationships that you had, and you're in a cave all alone, you might be feeling somewhat peaceful there, but you're not enlightened yet because you haven't been able to come in contact with people and have relationships and learn how to do that peacefully. So the Buddha did go away from his family for 6 years, but he was in contact with people every single day because he had to get food. He was walking down the street collecting food from people. So the idea of the Buddha going into the forest for all these years and never seeing anybody, and that's how you get rid of your attachment, that's not actually true. But sometimes going away from people, it does help you eliminate your attachment, but that doesn't mean you can't ever come back together with them and spend time with them. So I'm going to teach you how to eliminate your attachments by all the different things you need to do, and then you can reside more harmonious in all these relationships. And just like always, you guys can ask questions here at the temple by using the mics, and those of you guys online, you can ask questions through putting it in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So let me find my mouse. Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. All right, so the first thing you need to do in order to eliminate attachment to the people that are close to you is you need to acquire wisdom. You need to develop your life practice on the path to enlightenment. You need to learn these teachings and focus on developing your own deep practice of the teachings. You're not going to understand how to eliminate these attachments if you don't know the Eightfold Path. You don't know breathing mindfulness meditation. You don't know generosity and all these other things that you're learning. So continuing to learn and grow and develop. And remember, acquiring wisdom means that you're intellectually learning, investigating and examining, you're reflecting to independently verify, and then you're practicing. And you're not going to get it 100% perfect the first time. So this is an iterative process that you learn a little bit, you reflect on it to independently verify it, you practice, start integrating these things into your life, you stumble, fall, you make some mistakes, trip over your feet, you come learn some more. Right? You learn with your teacher some more, you build up your wisdom, you now reflect on the teachings, independently verify them, and then you go practice some more. So it's this iterative process where you're constantly cultivating wisdom. You're also going to need to understand true love. That's why I talked about that this morning, right? These talks are in a certain series for a reason. You're going to need to know what true love is, and you're going to need to practice that. Understanding that love is not attachment, and when you're missing a person, that's not love. Sometimes people think that when you're missing somebody, that's your love, right? So if you went away and you called back to your life partner and you said, "Honey, did you miss me?" and they said no, you might think that they don't love you, right? But that's not the love, right? That's if you're missing somebody, what you're saying is, I can't be content unless you're here. I can only be content when you're here. I can only be peaceful and joyful when you're here. So that's not actually love. That's the craving, desire, attachment. That's the mind holding on. So you're going to need to understand what true love is, and understanding and being comfortable with everybody making their own decisions, and understanding that when you're grieving in your relationships, like if the relationship's over and you grieve, or if somebody dies and you grieve, that's not the love that's causing that. So what I taught you this morning, and there's more to learn about that, there's more for you to practice to get more and more to unconditional love. That's what you're going to need to do in order to eliminate your attachment to the people who are closest to you. You're going to need to get comfortable with having people make their own decisions and allowing them to have the freedom to make those decisions. We all have free will, every single one of us. But sometimes when we're in relationships, we try to coerce each other to do things a certain way. You might try to control your brothers and sisters, or they might try to control you with certain decisions, or your life partner or your children, because you want them to do things a certain way. You're going to need to learn how to step back and let them make their own decisions and be comfortable with them making their own free will decisions. So allowing space for other people to have their own thoughts and ideas, treat things like an open door. Ask and invite your friends and family rather than putting pressure on them or forcing them. What I mean by this is, trying to think of some examples. So like with my son, I might say, Bailan, would you like to help me clean? Mom's gone, right? Mom's gone. She went to the USA. I would like to clean up the house. Would you like to help Dad? And he's like, sure, I'll help out. Right? Instead of like, hey, your mom's gone, we need to clean this house, get up off your butt, let's go clean. Right? This is like trying to force or coerce them into doing, like, you have to do this. Because as soon as people do that to you, you dig in your feet. You don't want to do it. You'll actually be more influential if you ask and invite people. And then whatever choice they make is the choice that they make. Right? And this is going to help you in your relationships, where if you're putting pressure on people, this is going to result in difficulties. And the other example I gave you was like my wife when I was talking about going to the movies, where I used to say, hey, do you want to go to the movies? And she would say no. And I'd be like, you're a party pooper. Why don't you ever want to go to the movies with me? And I'd be maybe angry about that. That's pressuring and forcing, and you're not going to be successful. That's the attachment. But when I can ask and invite, I can say, hey, honey, would you like to go to the movies? And she's like, yeah, I'd like to go. Or no, I'm not interested in going. Okay, great. Right? You're just asking and inviting, and you can be comfortable either way. If you have a craving, desire, attachment in your relationship, you can only be happy if they do things your way. And you're going to need to understand impermanence, that they're sometimes going to do things differently, and they're not always going to do things the way you're thinking. So let go of wanting them to do things a certain way and just ask them and invite people to join you. And if they would like to join, wonderful. I don't know if you guys even hear my language when I'm talking about meditation. Even when people come to the temple and they're physically sitting here on a meditation mat, I will sometimes say, I would like to invite you to join for meditation. I don't know if you guys have ever heard me say that, but I will sometimes say that. Even though they've chosen to come to the temple, even though they're sitting on a meditation mat. I'm inviting people to meditate, right? I'm not forcing them. I'm saying you have to do this or you have to do that. You would like to pay attention to your language and your word choices as you talk with people because they communicate a certain meaning. That's why on the first day of this course, I taught the Eightfold Path, because you need to know right speech in order to get to this kind of teaching like this. So paying attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, talking gently, asking and inviting people rather than trying to pressure them or force them to do anything particular. Be comfortable with the struggle. Allow people to struggle sometimes if that's what they need to do. You can offer your advice. You can ask and invite them if they would like your advice, but ultimately you're going to need to allow their struggle because it's their life, their decisions, and their results. Like my son, sometimes I'll give you this example that one time he had a bunch of friends in the village. And when my wife and I saw this, we saw that these boys were into unwholesome things and they were making unwise decisions. And we told my son, we said, hey, those people you're hanging out with, we think you're going to have problems with those people and you may consider not to be friends with them because you're going to have issues. And he's like, oh no, I like hanging out with them. Those are my friends. Those are my buddies. Okay, up to you. You make whatever choices you like. And we just allowed him to go. We knew he was going to have issues. And it wasn't more than a couple of months later that he came home one day and I was like, where's your bike? Where's your bike helmet? Oh, somebody stole it. I came out of my friend's house and it was stolen. Well, we live in a village it's a fenced-in community. It's a gated community. And I knew that it was somebody that he was hanging out with. It was one of his friends. So we started looking into it. And of course, it was one of his friends. They stole his bike helmet or they stole his bicycle. I forget. I know it was his bike helmet. I can't remember if it was a bike or not. But either way, they took something from him. And we started talking about it. We got to the end of it. And eventually this boy brought the bike helmet back. And it was this boy that he was hanging out with. And then even still, he didn't choose to stop their relationship. He continued to have a relationship with these boys. Well, it wasn't more than a couple of weeks later, he came home one day and he was all soaking wet. And I was like, what happened? He was like, oh, they dumped water on me. You know, he was riding down the bike on his bicycle and they took a big bucket of water, and it wasn't Sungran. So it wasn't like that time of year. It was at some other time. They just dumped a big bucket of water on his head. And I was like, okay, well, are these friends you're still going to hang out with? Like, what is your plan here? He's like, yeah, I don't think I should hang out with them anymore. He's like, what should I do, Dad? So I explained to him, I said, you don't have to look down on them. You don't have to think badly of them, but I think you should go away from them for a period of time so that they can see that they made unwise decisions, that they were treating you a certain way and you're choosing not to spend time with them. If you see them in the village, if you pass by them, say hello, smile, why to them, whatever it is, but just choose not to spend time with them and hang out with them. So that's what he chose to do. And then it was about a year later that some of these boys, we happened to see them because I used to walk around the neighborhood, and these boys started being very respectful. They started whining to us. They started smiling to us. Where in the past, they used to never do that. But once my son stepped away from the relationship and they realized what happened, they started becoming more and more respectful about a year afterwards. And then that's where my son started spending a little bit of time with them again because they started getting more wise and they started being more respectful and more polite, right? So sometimes you got to step away from a relationship, and not that you're trying to teach them a lesson, but you're just trying to make a decision for yourself that, hey, it's not wise for me to be in this relationship. And with my son, I needed to allow him to struggle. If I would have went in there and I would have forced him to not hang out with those boys anymore, all he would have learned was Dad's trying to control my life. But what he learned in that situation is he learned how to make wise friends, because when he started moving from school to school, he's moved to 2 different schools now, I see him making really helpful relationships, really beneficial relationships. The students that he chooses to hang out with, the friends that he chooses to hang out with, I can see they're into really wholesome things. He would have never learned those lessons and learned how to select wise, wholesome friends if I would have just rushed in there and made a bunch of decisions for him. So by stepping back and allowing him to make his own decisions, I'm not attached to him. I'm not forcing him to do any particular thing, but he also was able to cultivate wisdom, and now he has the wisdom of how to make wise friends and cultivate relationships. So that's one of the benefits of stepping back and allowing people to struggle if that's what they're choosing to do, because then they get to cultivate wisdom. So I asked my son if he would like advice about these friends that he was hanging out with, and he said, no, I'm interested in hanging out with them. Okay, go ahead. My wife and I knew it was going to lead to issues, and it did. And then he learned that and he understood that. But now he has the wisdom of how to make wise friends. And now I don't have to do anything because he knows how to do it on his own. I don't have to constantly be over him, trying to explain to him, don't have friends with that, don't be friends with that person, be friends with this person. I don't have to do that because he's got the wisdom on board to do it himself. So sometimes allowing the struggle is the most loving and kind thing you can do. But if you're attached to your mom or your dad, or if I was attached to my son and I wanted everything to be perfect in his life, I wouldn't feel comfortable with allowing that struggle. But when he came home all wet that day, I was smiling. When he came home in his helmet, and they had stole his helmet, I was inside. I was smiling. I wasn't happy that it got stolen. I wasn't happy that he got this water. But I knew, like, yeah, exactly. This is what I've been saying. I didn't say that to him, but in my mind, that's what I was thinking. Is like, yeah, this is what was going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. So I just guided him through it. Right. So allowing the struggle, they can cultivate wisdom. Understand that everybody is an individual being. Sometimes when we get married, we're taught that now we're one person and we're supposed to agree on everything, right? Like, especially in American culture where I grew up, they teach you, like, when you get married, you are now one individual. You're supposed to function as one individual and everything needs to be agreed on. Well, if you've been in any relationships, you know that you're not going to agree with everything that your partner does, and they're not going to agree with everything you do either. And that's okay. Sometimes we think disagreement is disrespect. But this isn't actually true. Disagreement just means we've had different experiences in life and we're approaching this issue in different ways. Of course we have different approach. Of course we have a different opinion. Of course we don't agree on what we should do. But disagreement doesn't mean we need to fight to death to determine who's right and who's wrong. Again, if you think there's only one right answer in any given situation, you'll be like an animal where you'll fight to the death. Right? Two lions coming together, that one is on each other's territory, they'll fight to the death in order to convince this other lion, like, hey, this is my herd, or this is my pack or my pride of lions, this is my land, and you can't come into this land, and I'll fight you to death to protect this. Right? That's what animals do. But for us human beings, we don't have to do that. We can understand that, of course, this person has a different opinion. Of course, we disagree with each other because this is the universal truth of impermanence. There's not going to be a situation where you agree with other people. But disagreement doesn't mean disrespect, and disagreement doesn't mean you need to fight to the end of the life, right? You don't have to fight to death. You don't have to argue to try to convince the other person that you're right and they're wrong, right? Because there's multiple right answers. So when there's disagreement, whether it's a life partnership or parents or children, you can sit down and talk and you can discuss, right? And that with craving, desire, attachment, that's going to be hard to do. So that's why you need to be eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. But more and more, you'll be able to sit down and have discussions. Remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. The first factor is speaking at the proper time, right? If in the proper time is that your mind is ready to talk, right? Of course, you're not interrupting people. The second part of that is that your mind's prepared to talk. And the third part of that is making sure your person you're talking to, that they're ready to talk. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're agitated, it's not the proper time to talk. It would be unwise to come together and have that conversation. So if you need to delay the conversation for a few hours or a few days, that's better than forcing yourselves to be in a conversation where you're both getting angry and hostile and bitter, because that's the only thing that's going to come out of your mind. So talking with each other and having discussions, understanding that everybody's their own individual being and they're going to make different decisions, that you're not going to meet a partner and live together and now you guys are all going to make exactly the same decisions. Even two enlightened beings, they're not going to make the same decisions, right? You would think that two enlightened beings would make exactly the same decisions all the time. That's not true, right? Sometimes people think like being enlightened is like a template and every enlightened being will make exactly the same decisions. It's not actually true. They're both going to be making wise decisions, but there's multiple wise decisions in any one given situation. There's not just one wise decision. So even now, me and my wife, we will sit down sometimes and we'll talk, and we have difference of opinion and we do things differently. And it's not that her way is wrong or right and my way is wrong or right. It's that there can actually be two valid, very good, helpful ways to do things, or there can be 10 or 20 or 30. So you're never going to get to a situation where in your relationships, you're going to agree on everything, but you don't have to agree. You just need to decide whether, hey, this is something that I can work with or not. So I'll give you an example on this one. My wife, when we live together, she treats the house like it's her house. right? And my son knows this, and I know this. Even though the money that paid for the house was from me when I was in business, I put the house in her name, right? So we all know that it's her house. My son and I, we just live there, right? It's not actually our house, it's her house. If I live there, when I live there, as I live there, if I'm going to do anything to the house, I will talk to my wife and I'll say, hey, I would like to do this. Are you okay with that? And she'll say yes or no. We'll talk about it, and then I'll go off and do my thing. But she doesn't do that. I've woken up sometimes at 8, 9 a.m. in the morning to drills and saws in my house. And there's people like remodeling some aspect of our house. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on? I'll just wake up and I'll go out there and I'm like, whoa, they're installing some new stuff. Okay. And she just doesn't ask me. She doesn't talk to me. She doesn't try to see if I'm okay with it. She just goes off and does it. Right now, some partners, you might say that's unacceptable. I can't live with that. There's no way I could live with somebody like that. And that might be your choice. And that might be what you choose to do. And you need to, figure this out. But for me, when I see that, I'm like, all right, well, she's changing the house again. No big deal. Right. And I'm not attached to the house or the house being any one particular way. So it's completely fine with me. So you're going to have situations where you guys disagree and you do things completely different. In her mind, she doesn't have to get anybody's approval to do anything in the entire house. And that's the way she chooses to live her life. I choose to live differently. I think it's important to make sure the people in the house know what I'm doing and they're all comfortable with it. And that's what I would advise you to do too. But not everybody thinks that way. So you have to decide for yourself when you're living with people, what type of person are you interested in living with? And my way isn't necessarily the right way and her way is the wrong way. It's just you got to figure out what's working for y'all's relationship. And for us, this is what's working. More and more, she's starting to kind of talk to me a little bit, but still not much, right? On these particular things. And that's okay. That's okay. All right. So then this is leading to what I was just giving you an example of, which is discussions versus forced agreement. In the past, one of the things I used to do is I used to try to force my wife to agree with certain decisions that I was making, or somebody else maybe in my life. But now what we do is we discuss and we have discussions. And this is really helpful to get that skill of having discussions where you're talking to people. Because wherever you're trying to force your parents to make a certain decision, or your children or something like this is your craving, desire, attachment coming through. So in terms of you eliminating your craving, desire, attachment, you're going to need to get used to discussing things with people. And then you guys together figuring out what you're both comfortable with and what you're both doing. So she came to me a few weeks ago and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to the USA. And I said, oh, okay, really? When are you thinking of going? She said, maybe in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I said, oh, okay, no big deal. I said, how long are you thinking of going for? She said, oh, about 2 months. And I said, okay, sounds good. I was like, I'll be here with Bailan. No worries. I got everything sorted out. Right. So we just discussed it. Where in the past I might have been angry or frustrated. Like, what do you mean you're leaving? How could you leave? I've got all these things I need you to do. I want you to do this, or I want you to do this. But I've arranged my life now, and she's arranged her life where we're not attached to each other, that I can completely take care of everything. If she chooses to leave out of the country like that, I've got everything sorted where these classes start at 9. My son needs to be at school at 7:45, 7:50. So I can take my son to school, drop him off, come here to teach. And then he gets off school at 3 o'clock. So class is in here at 3. They have like a 30-minute little play time over there. So after class, when he's in school, I'll just go to the school and pick him up. So I can drop him off and pick him up. I can make meals for him. I can do all those kinds of things that I need to do. So I'm not attached or dependent on my wife to do these kinds of things. So you can structure your life in such a way that you're not dependent or attached to your partner. And if they leave out of the scenario, everything comes to a crashing halt. You can structure your life in such a way that you can sustain your life and do all the things you need to do independent of your partner. So like in our family, we know this is not the first time she's needed to leave. I think this might be the second or third time that she's went to America for a period of time and worked and then come back. So I've set up my life in such a way that when she does that, I don't need to change and make a bunch of changes. It's no big deal when mom says she's like to leave. So we discuss these kinds of things rather than forcing each other. So you guys can do that kind of stuff. You're going to need to spend time alone. Sometimes we get used to going out into the world with other people, and we only feel comfortable going out when we're with other people, right? Like if you're going to the mall, like when I grew up as a child, we were kind of in our group, it was like, well, if you go to the mall by yourself, you're a loser, right? I don't know if you guys had that when you were growing up, right? Where if you went out to, like when I was in college, if you were eating alone in the dining hall, people considered you a loser, that you didn't have any friends, right? Well, this isn't actually true. You're going to need time alone, because if you're always with other people, you're not going to have time to sit with your own thoughts. You're going to need to be reflective and look inward. So if you're always eating with other people, if you're always going to the mall with other people, if you're always going to the movies with other people, you're not going to have time to be reflective and look at your own thoughts. So you're going to need time to be able to do that. So spending time alone is going to help you to be comfortable not having attachment. Here in Thailand, if you go to the mall, you're going to see that there's actually quite a few people who go out on their own. Where when I go to America, it's common to see lots of people together in large groups at the mall. But if you spend time like going to holidays alone, going to the mall alone, going to the movies alone, going to eat alone, not that you're going to do this all the time, but occasionally you would like to do these kinds of things where you're just very comfortable being alone, traveling alone, going to dinner alone, and things like that. And I think a lot of you guys are actually traveling alone, so you're kind of getting used to that. And that's really wise for you to be able to do that occasionally. So you're comfortable that you have this life outside of other people, where if your life is only when you're with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and that's the only time you feel comfortable, and you don't have this life outside of that, that's where you'll feel miserable. Or if you only feel good when you're with your children, or you only feel good when you're with your parents or your brothers and sisters, you're not building this independence where you can feel comfortable alone. So you're going to need to do that. It's important to communicate with purpose, that when you're away from people that you're close to, you might be missing them, and you might be calling back to them and say, honey, what are you doing? What are you doing now? What are you doing there? What are you doing this? What are you doing that? There's no real purpose other than you're just having craving, desire, attachment to know what they're doing. Oh, honey, I missed you so much. What are you doing? What are you doing? How is this? How is that? So when you call and you talk with people, have a purpose behind it. So like my wife is gone now she's been gone about 2 weeks now. We talk maybe every 3 or 4 or 5 days. There's no schedule. There's no set time. So whenever she would like to call, she will call. Whenever we like to call, we call. But we have some certain purpose behind it, or messaging. So have a purpose behind it when you actually contact people. Remember, meditation and generosity, that needs to be continuous and ongoing. This is really important. Where possible, you would like to walk together in life and walk together in these teachings. If an entire household can be practicing the teachings, you guys will be able to support each other in your journey to enlightenment. But this isn't always possible, right? Because not everyone's going to be interested in practicing the teachings. But where you have like a husband and wife, or, a household that's practicing the teachings, you guys are all kind of from the same sheet of music operating in life, and you can be very successful this way. And both of you guys are working on eliminating your attachment. Whereas if, say, you were in a partnership and you're practicing the teachings, getting to true love and working on accomplishing true love, and your partner is not, you guys are really struggle. Because as I mentioned, they go on a business trip and they call you and they're like, honey, did you miss me? No? Right? They're not going to understand that. So you're going to need to, if you can, have a situation where the people around you are practicing. But that's not always going to be possible. But if you have a partner if you don't have a partner now and you're looking to select a partner, if you can select a partner that's practicing these teachings, you guys will be able to build a much better life together, because you guys are both working on non-attachment, where you have a life together and you enjoy that, but you also have a life apart from each other too. And you have other friends and other things and other activities that you do. What you'll notice is that if you're sleeping in the same bed with somebody continuously, your mind will get attached to this. So if you can learn to sleep alone occasionally, this is really helpful. If you've ever been in a long-term relationship where you guys live together and you guys were sleeping together, you might have noticed when they go away, you have trouble sleeping. It's difficult to sleep. And this is because you guys are always sleeping together. So sometimes when we sleep apart, when we're in a relationship, sometimes people have the perception that something's wrong, that there's something wrong with our relationship. But that doesn't have to be the case. You can actually choose to sleep separately occasionally in order to train your mind and train their mind not to be attached. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong just because you guys are choosing to sleep apart from each other occasionally. So if you're living with a partner or a child, child or something like this and you guys are sleeping together regularly, that's fine. Enjoy sleeping in the same bed, but occasionally sleep in different locations. And what I mean occasionally, at least once a month, once every 2 weeks, kind of sleep apart. So that at that point when you experience impermanence and they go on a business trip or they go somewhere else, you're not sitting there for days upon days having difficulty sleeping because your mind's attached. So this is one of the ways that you can help your mind to let go. Oops. No attachment cultivates closeness. Sometimes people are taught, and this is a common in American culture, I don't know about other cultures, they say a family that eats together stays together, right? And when I was growing up, there was a lot of obligation and expectation to everybody eat at the same time, like 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. Everybody has to eat at the same time. And we were kind of forced to all eat at the same time. And then people feel miserable because some people are hungry, some people aren't. Some people are interested in eating and some people aren't. So those kinds of things, you have to be able to see that this is a cultural conditioning. This is things that maybe people do in your culture, but it's not necessarily the wisest, that everybody's not going to be hungry at the same time. And if everybody's forced to eat together at the same time, you might actually see that there's a lot of arguments at dinner time. So one of the things that we've done at our home is we have a dinner table where people can eat, and then we actually have an L-shaped sofa around the dinner table, and we don't have a set time to eat in our house. Whenever somebody would like to eat, they just get food. And if my son's eating and I would like to spend time with him while he's eating, I'll sit down at the table with him, or I might sit on the sofa next to the table, and then I can relax and spend time with them. So this is something that you might consider doing, is that not having a fixed time that everybody has to eat in the house. Now, occasionally there's certain events where those kind of things happen, but by and large, just letting everybody choose to eat whenever they would like to eat, that's like the best thing. It's very rare that our entire family sits down to eat, but we're all very close. We have lots of joy and lots of fun together, but we don't force ourselves to all eat together at the same time. So when you get rid of attachment in your life, this is actually what's going to create the closeness and help you to stay together. So a family that doesn't have attachment, that's a family that's going to actually stay together for a long time. If there's any discontentedness, that means there's attachment in the relationship. There can't be discontentedness in the relationship if there is an attachment. So use that as the red light on the dashboard of your car, alerting you that, hey, there's attachment in our relationship and we've got to sort this out. And there's different ways to be able to sort that out, like I'm sharing with you here. When you're spending time with your people that are close to you, look at the quality of time that you're spending versus the quantity of time. Because oftentimes we feel like the more time we spend with somebody, that means that we're the closest to them, right? But the quantity of the amount of time that you're spending with someone isn't an indication of anything, right? But the quality of time, you would like to look at the quality of time that you're spending together and spend good quality time. You're going to need to be patient because these attachments, it's going to take a while to eliminate them out of the mind. You're not going to be able to just quickly eliminate these attachments, but through gradual and consistent ongoing training of the mind, that's what's going to help you to eliminate attachments from the mind. And then lastly, the very last thing that I will share in order to help you guys to eliminate attachment to those close to you is this is the most impactful thing that you can do in order to eliminate attachment to the people close to you. The Buddha referred to it as contemplation of death or reflection of death. And this is a technique that you do. What you do is, let's just say that you know that you're attached to your mom, and the idea of your mom getting sick just really bothers you. The idea of your mom dying, it really causes a lot of complications, a lot of sorrow in your mind. And what you would like to do is what's called reflection on death, which is after you've already got a good breathing mindfulness meditation practice and generosity well established, at some point you would like to start reflecting on your mom's death. What this means is you sit somewhere, possibly with your eyes closed, and you envision that your mom has died. Maybe you've gotten a phone call from the police or a doctor or a nurse or something like this, and they're informing you that your mom has died. You're not planning for your mom to die. You're not aspiring for her to die, but you're just envisioning in your mind as if it's happened. You're confronting this. So now in your mind, as you're reflecting on mom's death, you kind of play that out. What's the next steps? You're not planning it out. You're just playing it out as if it has happened, right? So maybe now you go talk to a funeral home, or maybe you need to identify the body. Maybe you're preparing some viewing or some funeral. Maybe you're picking out caskets or helping or choosing to have her cremated. Again, you're not planning it out. Your decisions when she ultimately dies can be completely different, but you're just living this out as if she has died within your own mind. And as you're doing that, you might actually grieve. You might become sorrowful. You might experience this. And if that's happening, that's the attachment that's starting to break away. And as your mind isn't getting what it wants, which is mom to be permanent, you might notice this grief and sorrow coming up in your mind. And as you're doing this, what happened when I did this is I realized at the end of this that there were certain things that if my mom had truly died, I would have regretted never telling her. Or there were certain things that I wanted to hear from my mom that if she had truly died, I wouldn't have been able to hear those things from her. I wouldn't have been able to ask her those questions. So after I did this and I had a little bit of grief and sorrow in my mind, after my mind regained its composure, I picked up the phone and I called her. And I was like, Mom, I've always been meaning to tell you. Mom, I've always been meaning to ask you. And I had that conversation. And it was wonderful because if she had truly died, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation. So what you're essentially doing is you're confronting death. Because death is going to come visit you, right? Your parents are going to die. Your partner's going to die. Your brothers and sisters are going to die. You're going to die. All these things are going to happen. And you can either let it sneak up on you and catch you by surprise, or you can confront it. It's like, hey, I see you, death, over there. I'm going to come see you. I'm not going to let you come sneak up on me. I'm going to come see you. Because when someone dies in your life, it can feel like you're chopped off at the knees, or that the carpet has been pulled out from under your feet. If you've had someone close to you die, you know what that feeling's like. And that's because of the attachment. So what you're doing here is you're putting the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is confront this death. And now you're doing it on your terms. Rather than allowing death to sneak up on you, you're doing it on your terms. And now when you do this, you might get sorrowful, you might grieve, and you're going to regain your composure over a couple of days. Some people have even said it's taken them a week or two with certain people in their life to regain their composure. And that's why you like to have your breathing mindfulness meditation and your generosity well underway by the time you do this. But eventually your mind's going to regain its composure. And then you're going to need to do this again, right? You're going to need to do it again and again and again, maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks, until you get to a point where you've done it 2 or 3 times. You're completely fine. It's like, yep, mom's going to die. It's okay. You've accepted it. There's no tears. There's no grieving. There's no sadness. You've just fully accepted it. And by doing this, this is what will help you eliminate your attachment to the people closest to you, along with all these other things. So whether it's your life partner, whether it's your children, whether it's your grandparents or whatever, this is one of the biggest ways to eliminate your attachment to people close to you. And more likely than not, if you have children, they're not going to die before you. More likely than not, you're going to die before your children. But this helps you eliminate your attachment to them so that when you are dying, you're not attached to them and you're not holding on, right? So I needed to do this with each individual member of my family. Some people have pets that they're attached to. You could do this for them. You can even do this for your own life. Like if you're afraid of death or you have fear of death, you can sit and envision that you have died and play that out. Like a police officer is going to talk to your mom, or maybe a doctor is talking to your mom or your dad or somebody else or your life partner. And you can play that out, what your funeral is like. Not that you're planning it, you're just confronting it. And this will help you eliminate any fear you have for death itself. So any questions on any of these things that I've been sharing? Yeah, if you could get a mic, we have some people online.
There's a lot of hype nowadays about life extension medicine and therapy. And there's a lot of, like, especially Silicon Valley is super obsessed with the idea of living forever. How do you think that the practice of Buddhism would change if we do discover a cure to death? Or let's say we could live 10,000 years. Do you think the religion, or not the religion, but the path would change?
No, there's never going to be a time that we'll ever discover how this body can be permanent and how we could live forever. There's no such thing. Because we're born, we're going to experience sickness, aging, and death. we're going to experience the impermanent nature of this body. It's inevitable. Anything that rises, it's going to change, it's going to fade away. It's a universal truth, and you can see it, all around you. So this is one of the interesting things I think about from time to time, because there's lots of money, I'm sure, going into how to figure out how to have eternal life, and it's just never going to be possible ever. They'll never find it because it just doesn't exist. Okay, you have a question, Frank?
So when it comes to not being attached to certain people, two things come to my mind. One of them is the impression of, oh, well, wait, if Frank's not reacting to someone passing away, wow, he's kind of cold-hearted, right? Like there's a bit of that, which, on one hand, I'm like, I'm just being me, like whatever, I don't really care, kind of thing. But at the same time, to navigate society and kind of family dynamics, it's almost like part of me wants to, cry fake tears to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, Frank actually did care, and so I'm not sure how to navigate that, because not everyone around me is on the path. Not everyone has taken, this class about non-attachment. Well, what do you, and I mean, connected to that, not just society, but even when dating someone who might not be on the path. I remember a friend of mine was complaining that her boyfriend was just like would not engage in a fight with her. And, and she's like, oh, it makes me so mad. And I think eventually they broke up because she wanted, that bit of a reaction, that rise. And he's like, no, I don't like drama.
Yeah. So I've had students ask me this before, because they're actually experiencing it, where they're learning, they're practicing, they're developing their mind. Someone close to them dies, they go to a funeral, they're not crying, they're not upset because they're not attached, and now their family members are like, you didn't care, you don't love her, right? So this is that person's perception. They have a perception. A perception is a view or opinion that may or may not be true. It's essentially like an assumption, right? So other people are going to have perceptions, and they're going to cling to those perceptions, and then they're going to judge you, right? They're going to judge you as being good or bad, and this is their own conceit, right? And that's harming that person, right? The only reason why you would worry about that is because of your own personal existence view, your own pollution within your own mind. If you have personal existence view in your mind, you will worry what other people think of you because you want to be perceived by others in a certain way. But when you get rid of your personal existence view, if someone's judging you and looking down on you and thinking negatively of you, if they're clinging to a certain perception, it's harming that person. It's not harming you. But when you have personal existence view, you'll experience painful feelings because you want to be perceived by others in a certain way. So when my mom died, prior to her dying, she died in 2017, I left America in 2015. And prior to me leaving, probably a good 2 or 3 years before, I let everybody know, like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to be going to Thailand. If you guys would like to see me, you got 2 or 3 years before I'm leaving, just to let you know. And then, like, getting closer, a year, I gave everyone a heads up. 6 months, I gave everyone a heads up. 3 months, 2 weeks, I said, hey guys, I'm leaving. And all through this process, I said, by the way, when I'm gone, I'm not coming back for graduations. I'm not coming back for babies being born. I'm not coming back for funerals and marriages and things like this, because we have a certain number of people in our family. And I was like, the whole reason why I'm moving to Thailand is because I was going back and forth so much, and I knew this is where I needed to be and where I was interested in being, and I wasn't interested in going back and forth all the time. And I also knew I wouldn't be able to afford going back and forth all the time. So I let everyone know. So when my mom died, when she was on her deathbed, she called me and she said, hey, I just found out I have a 1 week to live. And I said, oh, okay, Mom, I understand. She said, I'm sorry for everything that I've ever done. I've done my best, whatever. And then I said, okay, no worries, Mom, you can die in peace. And she said, I've already told everybody that you're probably not going to be coming back for the funeral. And I was like, oh yeah, Mom, thank you for remembering. That's exactly what I shared. She said, okay, I understand. You let me know. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I love you. It's just that, I'm not able to come back for the funeral. She said, okay, yeah, no worries. And we just said goodbye, right? Well, later, my niece, one of my nieces, was really upset that I didn't come rushing back for her grandmother, which was my mom, that I didn't come rushing back to America when she was dying, when my mom was dying. What could I have done? I couldn't have done anything. Me being there isn't going to solve anything. But in their mind, in order to love somebody, that's what you had to do. There were certain expectations of what they wanted, but it didn't affect me. If they think of me as a bad person and negatively, even still, this same niece, she won't talk. She won't have any conversation with me, which is no issue, because I'm not attached to having a conversation with this person. I don't hate her. I don't think badly of her. I have nothing but genuine interest in seeing her be well, but she has a certain craving, a certain expectation of wanting me to be a certain way. And I'm not interested in subscribing to that, because I'm not going to do what she wants me to do. And if she wants to get angry, if she wants to judge me, if she wants to look at me as a bad person and think that that's the case, that's her opinion. That's her view. My mom fully knew that I wasn't coming back, and that's why she said it on her deathbed. So if you don't have personal existence for you, when people are judging you and thinking badly of you, then you understand that that's their opinion, that's their perception. It's harming them. You know that you're not that person. Just because you're not crying doesn't mean that you don't love. It doesn't mean that you don't care. So I didn't grieve at all about my mom dying, because I'd already let go of my attachment 25 years prior. So when she called me, she was in her deathbed, I was just completely calm. I was like, all right, Mom, rest in peace, be well. Thank you for everything you've ever done for me. There was no tears. There was nothing, no upset or anything, but I still love my mom, right? I still care for her, even based on all the things that she did during my childhood. I still love her as my mother. So crying and being upset at a funeral isn't the love. It's the craving, desire, attachment. And there's plenty of people that aren't going to understand that. And it's not your responsibility to go around and teach them and tell them about these things. If they're judging you and they're looking down and being negative about that, it's probably not best to be in those kinds of relationships anyway. So this niece who is judging me and looking down on me because I didn't come back for my mother's funeral, she doesn't want any kind of relationship whatsoever. Okay. That's fine. I don't need to be in that relationship, because it wouldn't be just that expectation. There would be more and more and more and more and more expectations. And she would be constantly making herself upset because I'm not doing what she wants me to do. But when you understand that this life isn't about pleasing others, it's not about doing what other people want you to do. It's doing what you feel is best for your life. And other people may or may not agree with that. But just because people don't agree with your decisions doesn't mean your decisions are wrong. Sometimes we can have family members that disagree with our decisions, but that doesn't mean it's a bad decision. It's just that that person doesn't agree with it. So you'll have to free yourself of wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way and just live your life. Because if you're at that funeral and you're not crying, that doesn't mean you didn't love the person or you don't care. It just means you're not attached to the person. That's all that means.
Right. Can I ask you to go back to the slide about communications? Mm-hmm. With purpose, I believe it was.
Yep.
Right. And so is that less about attachment than it is about frequency? Right. So I mean, I don't know, maybe it does add value to a relationship to just know that when I'm away, just updating my partner on, hey, like, what am I up to? What am I doing?
I'm at the airport. I'm eating dinner. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. That's just going to build attachment into the relationship.
Okay, maybe not that much, but right. But I mean, just kind of an update every day. It's like, hey, how's your day? But because from my experience, it does build a certain closeness, the consistency, and I don't know if that's necessarily building closeness, trust, and a connection, or if it's also or creating attachment.
Yeah. Anytime you're doing something regularly like that and consistently, there's the potential for the mind to get attached to it, because the mind craves permanence. So if you get used to messaging your girlfriend every single day, there's going to be a day where you don't message her. It's going to happen, right? You can't, throughout this long relationship, message her every day. So if you start the relationship and continue it where you're messaging every day, at the 3-month mark where you don't message her, now something's wrong, and she's discontent, and she's going to blame you for it, right? If she's not on the path, right? So it's better early on in your relationship to not do that and not message every single time. So like when my wife left for the USA, I know she's not attached to me, and if there's any attachment to my son, it's very minimal. But when she left, I don't think we messaged for like the first 3, 4, 5 days. I don't think we even contacted her. She didn't even contact us. There's no need. She's a big girl. She can go to America and be just fine. No need to message and do those kinds of things. So if you build in where you're regularly messaging somebody, you're just inviting their mind to get attached to you. And then there's going to be discontentedness at some point, because you can't sustain a message every single day, or every hour, every 3 times a day. You can't sustain that because you're going to be doing other things. Trust shouldn't come from, if I message you, you will trust me, because that's conditional. Trust should be unconditional. So if they can only trust you if you message them, that's not the actual trust, because as soon as the messages go away, they won't trust you anymore. So you'd like to build it in through them seeing that, yeah, I can go away and I cannot message you for 3 or 4 or 5 days, but then we can come back together, and I'm very loyal and committed to our relationship, having great quality time together. And then we can go away again, and then we can come back together, and we can be very loyal, loving, and committed to each other. So I don't have to be attached and holding on to you every single moment, and that's a sign of my love or my commitment to you, because that's just conditional.
Got it. And changing gears to the topic of loneliness, I think I mentioned it in one of these slides, the idea of not feeling the attachment to the idea that you need to be with someone, at all. Well, not maybe not at all times, but just even in general, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea of like, I think it was eating alone, like shopping alone, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But how does that intermingle with the idea that we learn about when it comes to just good mental health habits, we'll say, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know, where it's like like the people who tend to be happier when they have better social connections and relationships, mm-hmm. right? So it's like try to foster those good social relationships, mm-hmm. and friendships, right? But then here we're almost saying, well, wait a minute, don't become attached to it, because like once someone goes away, well, then you're going to be unhappy. Like, I guess I'm trying to understand, from a certain human social animal, like needs, right, as a tribal species, with enlightenment.
Sure. So what I'm teaching is the middle way. Right? So there's one side where you're always with other people. You will only go to the mall if you're with other people. You will only go out to the movies with other people. You only go to the restaurant with other people. You won't sit there by yourself and just have a meal, or just go to the movies by yourself. Always with other people, right? That's one side. The other side is always being alone. Right? And either side of this, you're not going to have peacefulness. You're not going to have joy. Mm-hmm. So what I'm teaching you is to come to the middle. And because people oftentimes are grabbing on, and this whole topic is about attachment to people, I'm teaching you to sometimes spend time alone, where you sometimes go to the mall alone. You sometimes go to the movies alone. But that's not always. You're still going to need to cultivate relationships. And when you have relationships without attachment, you actually have much more fulfilling, sustaining, and satisfying relationships. But if you can only be happy if you go to the movies with somebody, mm-hmm. then that means you're not comfortable to be alone. Your mind's still attached. So you're going to need to go alone to do these things so that you can feel comfortable with people and you can feel comfortable without people. So it's not about doing one thing all the time or the other thing all the time. It's about coming to the middle, introducing some impermanence so your mind doesn't get attached to being with people all the time. But also sometimes people can get attached to being alone, right? And if somebody was always alone and they're just like, hey, I don't like being around people, my suggestion would be start going around people. But then there's some people who are just always with others and they're like, I don't feel comfortable alone. Okay, you need to spend time alone. So in this topic here about eliminating attachment to other people, I'm teaching people, okay, sometimes spend time alone, because you're going to need that in order to eliminate your attachment to people.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What's that? Yeah, this is an independent journey to enlightenment, but there's other people that you need, right? You need a teacher, you need relationships with friends and family, you need those kinds of things, but it's a matter of not being dependent on it. So like every single problem you ever have, you're not going to come to me and talk to me about it, but certain significant ones, certain challenging ones, certain ones that where you're not sure on, you're going to need my help, you're going to need guidance. So you need people, but you're not interested in being attached to them. So it is an independent journey, but you need support from other people in your life. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online. So what I'll do then is just end here by helping you guys understand what I'm going to be sharing with you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to start with loving kindness meditation, of course. Then I'm going to talk about sharing the path to enlightenment, how to guide children along the path. If you have no interest in ever having a children or you don't have children, this will still help you because it's going to help you with that life partner. It's going to help you with your coworker. It's going to help you with mom and dad. So it's going to help you when people are coming to you and saying, hey, I need your help about this particular thing. I'm going to teach you this, but I'm going to focus it on children, but then you can see how it'll be relatable to other relationships as well. This is a pretty long discussion. Then I'm going to teach you how to develop and maintain relationships, choosing wholesome friends and a life partner, giving you some guidance around this. That's after our mid-morning break. And then, that's in the afternoon. Sorry. That topic about the children, that's all morning because it's a pretty meaty topic, right? About how to guide others. So in the afternoon, I'm going to be teaching you this. And of course, we're going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation in the afternoon as well. Okay, so enjoy your evening and perhaps I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Okay? Sawadee khap, sawadee khap, sawadee khap.